The boy's voice was barely audible when he spoke, but what he said froze the entire courtroom. He told me if I moved, he'd shoot me. A ripple of whispers swept through the benches, then died instantly as the teenager at the defendant's table leaned back in his chair, smirking. Not nervous, not remorseful, smirking like this was all beneath him. And that's when everyone realized this wasn't just another robbery case. This was something darker. If you think you've seen arrogance in a courtroom before, wait until you hear what this kid says next. Because by the end of this story, you'll understand why even a calm, legendary judge like Frank Caprio couldn't hold back. Before we go further, tell me in the comments, what should happen to someone who robs a child at gunpoint? And if you believe justice should be swift and unshakable, make sure you stay with this story, because what unfolds next changes everything. The victim was just 14 years old. Thin hoodie, worn sneakers, hands trembling as he clutched the edge of the witness stand. He didn't look up once. Not at the lawyers, not at the crowd, and definitely not at the boy who had pointed a gun at his chest just weeks before. Across the room, the defendant couldn't have looked more different. 17, expensive sneakers, designer jacket, gold chain glinting under the courtroom lights. He leaned back like he owned the place, one arm draped lazily over his chair, whispering jokes to his attorney. Privilege and fear, confidence and trauma, side by side. The prosecutor began calmly, outlining what seemed like a straightforward case, a late afternoon robbery outside a convenience store, the victim walking home, the defendant approaching, a handgun drawn, a demand for the phone, the wallet, everything. But then the prosecutor paused, and that's when everything changed. "Your Honor," she said, her voice tightening, "this is not an isolated incident." The courtroom shifted, subtle at first, a lean forward, a held breath. She presented CCTV footage, grainy, time-stamped. The same teenager, different days, different victims, same pattern. Approach, threaten, take, walk away. A pattern of fear stitched across weeks. The defendant's smirk flickered, but only for a second. Then he rolled his eyes. "This is a joke," he muttered, loud enough for half the courtroom to hear. And just like that, the temperature in the room dropped. The judge didn't react immediately. Frank Caprio simply adjusted his glasses, studying the screen, his expression unreadable. The victim was asked to describe what happened. His voice cracked. He pulled it out so fast, I thought I was going to die." Dead silence. Even the air felt heavy. "And what did he say to you?" the prosecutor asked gently. The boy hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "Don't make me famous today." A gasp rippled through the room. The defendant laughed, actually laughed, and that's when everything snapped. The judge leaned forward slightly, his voice calm, but edged with something sharper now. "Is this amusing to you?" The teenager shrugged. "He's exaggerating. Kids lie." The courtroom went silent. Not the usual quiet, not the respectful kind. This was the kind of silence that feels like a warning. The prosecutor didn't stop there. She introduced messages recovered from the defendant's phone, group chats, boasts, photos of cash, phones, watches. One message stood out. "Easy targets, they don't fight back." The victim lowered his head. The defendant shifted in his seat now, his confidence cracking just slightly. But then he made the mistake that would define everything. "You're acting like I killed someone," he snapped, louder this time. "It's just a phone. He'll live." The words hung in the air, heavy, disgusting, irreversible. That's when everything changed again. Judge Caprio leaned back slowly, his fingers steepled. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before, but every word landed like a hammer. "Do you understand," he said, "that what you took wasn't just a phone?" No response. "You took his sense of safety. You took his peace. You took his childhood, and you did it with a weapon designed to end lives." The defendant looked away. For the first time, he didn't have anything to say. But the unraveling wasn't over. A final witness was called, a school counselor. She described the victim's panic attacks, the nightmares, the refusal to walk alone, the grades dropping, the fear that lingered long after the robbery ended. "This wasn't theft," she said softly. "This was trauma." The courtroom went silent again. And this time, it stayed that way. The defense tried to recover. They spoke of youth, of mistakes, of potential, of a good family, of a bright future derailed, but the damage was done, because the truth had already taken root. The judge removed his glasses, placing them carefully on the bench. He looked directly at the defendant now, not with anger, but with something far more devastating. Disappointment. You had every advantage, Frank Caprio said slowly, every opportunity, and you chose to become the very thing society fears. The defendant swallowed hard. Gone was the smirk. Gone was the swagger. In its place, uncertainty. You stood there, the judge continued, and treated another human being's life like it was disposable, like it was entertainment, like it meant nothing. A pause. You're wrong. Another pause. It meant everything. The words echoed, and then came the line that would be remembered long after the courtroom emptied. Mercy is reserved for those who understand its value. You didn't. The defendant's shoulders slumped. For the first time he looked like a child, but it was too late. Given the pattern of behavior, the use of a firearm, and the lasting psychological harm inflicted, the judge said, his voice steady, this court finds that a strong message must be sent. The victim closed his eyes. The defendant gripped the edge of the table. 25 years. A sharp inhale from the gallery. No possibility of early release. Gasps, whispers, shock. The defendant's head snapped up, panic flooding his face. Wait, what? That's insane! But the judge didn't flinch. You asked for this moment the second you decided someone else's life didn't matter. The gavel struck, and just like that, it was over. The boy who once laughed in the face of fear was led away in silence. The victim remained seated, tears in his eyes. But something else too, relief. Weeks later, the story spread far beyond that courtroom. Schools talked about it, parents shared it, communities remembered it, because justice hadn't just been served, it had been seen. And in that visibility, something shifted. The victim slowly returned to school, walked a little taller, slept a little easier. And the message? It was clear. Actions have weight. Choices have consequences. And no amount of arrogance can outrun the truth. So tell me, was the sentence justified? Drop your thoughts below. And if you believe stories like this matter, if you believe justice deserves a spotlight, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to see it.